name is Christi, and I'm here today as a consultant working with the Council of State Governments, and I'm delighted to bring you a panel of mentor grantees. They are here to give you all of their wisdom about their experiences with adult mentoring programs, and I'm really here to facilitate this conversation so you can hear what people before you have gone ahead to do in their work successfully in their communities. So what I have up here is a series of questions to prompt conversation among the grantees, and then we're going to have time at the end of our conversation to answer your questions. But what I really want to do is sort of break open what it means to be an adult mentoring program and what the essential elements of mentoring programs are, and what the struggles have been with programs that have gotten started ahead of yours, what successes have been, and what some of the basic how-tos are and resources that are out there that can help you do your work. So I think that I want to go ahead and just launch into our conversation. We only have 90 minutes. I've got 5 fantastic people up here who want to tell you their stories. And oh my goodness, and I think my voice projects. Okay, so we'll work hard on this. So I want to go ahead and turn the stories over to the panel, and I'm just going to keep time and keep the conversation going, and I'll make sure there's time for Q&A at the end. If any of you who are out back can't hear us, there are a few seats left in the front. I'd recommend coming forward in case you have any trouble hearing. We will do our best to make our voices heard, but please don't hesitate to stop me if you need us to repeat. And again, I am Christi, and I'm going to let us go ahead with introductions, and I would love our grantees to tell us their names, their programs, and what they're doing to address the Second Chance Act in their communities.
Sure. My name is Boyd Brown. I'm with Goodwill Easter Seals in Minnesota, and we have been providing reentry programs probably for the past 6 or 7 years. It started with the Joyce Foundation grant, which is a regional foundation in the Midwest that provided transitional employment, work experience services through our Goodwill stores, as well as industry skills training, placement, basically really employment-related services. Since then, we've really tried to expand our services to more really look at holistically what types of things do individuals need when they're returning to the community from prison. And one of the things we looked at was mentoring. And so we started with a small mentoring program prior to the Second Chance Act release with a small foundation grant. And from that, with Second Chance Act, we have been able to expand that significantly. In addition to that, our Second Chance Act mentoring grant also partners with our Father Project, which is one of the Responsible Fatherhood grantees. And so we really can provide a holistic array of services for the men that are returning from prison. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Andy Sagvold, and I manage the reentry services programs at Goodwill Easter Seals, Minnesota, working with Boyd. We are working on 2 separate Second Chance grants currently in our office, in addition to working with individuals that are not coming out of prison but have criminal records who are on the Minnesota Family Investment Program. So we have several programs working with folks coming out of prison and also those that have records that are impacting their ability to successfully reintegrate back into the community as far as employment and the wraparound services that Boyd had mentioned. Just quickly, I've spent a lot of years working on victimization issues, and probably at the last 8 or 9 years have been working on reentry issues, trying to make our communities safer in Minnesota. But thanks for having us, and we look forward to sharing some of our insights over the last couple of years.
Hello, good morning. My name is Juliana, and I work for Our Children. We're a nonprofit organization, and we've been working with women and children affected by incarceration for over 25 years. We work directly in the prisons. We provide housing, employment services. We have a daycare and after-school program. And basically, we focus on family reunification. We were the recipient of the BJA mentoring grant in 2009. And that gave us resources to add additional programming to the already existing programs that we have. We've been running the mentoring program now for the women since 2009. In 2011, we received a motherhood-fatherhood grant from BJA, so now we introduce the fatherhood program, and hopefully we can bring children back into the fathers' lives. So I'm here today, and hopefully I can be of some assistance.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Kerri Schultheis. I am a project director with Arizona Women's Education and Employment in Phoenix, Arizona. We have been deliberately working with prisoner reentry since 2004, first in a 6-month release program, pre-release program, in a women's facility, and that expanded with the award of 3 separate Department of Labor grants, which also had a mentoring element infused within them. And so we've been working with reentry for a while now, and we've been looking at several models, and mentoring's always been touted, deliberately so, as something that really works with the population. So we've had time to kind of build our mentoring program since 2005 to now, and really incorporating the best practices from the several years that we've been working with it in the beginning to what it is now. And so we have been doing that for at least the last 2 years with this Second Chance Act money, but previously with DOL money. So we look forward to sharing the best practices that we've learned with all of you.
Hello, my name is Carletta Stringer. I work for Girl Scouts of Eastern Oklahoma. And what we do, originally in 2003, we started out taking children into the prison system to visit their mothers. But in 2010, we was able to get a grant from the Second Chance program to get mentors for the mothers that's incarcerated. And since I've been on board with the Second Chance program, as far as being a mentor, I have seen these women change, these women believe in themselves, and also that we can help them help themselves. And the same with me also. It's just loving your job and going out there to get the people to mentor.
Do any of you use different methods to recruit male volunteers, male mentors?
For me, I don't. What I've done is I've made all of my paperwork, flyers, everything co-op to bring both men and women involved.
And I would echo what Juliana had said, but I do have a separate element of training that is more gender responsive. So in that sense, there's that approach, but not for recruitment.
And at this time, we don't target male mentors, but in the future, we will.
And it's, yeah, absolutely.
Just in sort of thinking about the male mentors, what we've heard from some grantees is that it was a lot easier to find women to come in and do volunteer work than it was to find men who would be willing to come in and do that. So for you all who do work with men, have you found that there is a disparity in recruiting them, or is that not the case for you all? Because I know all of you sort of been up and running for some time now.
What I would say, we only recruit male mentors. We're working with men, and we wanted that male bonding experience. We have women coming all the time who want to mentor with us, and we have to say thank you, but no. We have found, it's very difficult. I mean, it's a challenge to find those male mentors. I think one of the things we have done to really focus on male mentors is go where men are. I mean, it's universities I've heard mentioned, it's sporting events and clubs and those kinds of things that men do in finding those mentors. I think another one, and mentioned the peer mentoring model, is we have, I mentioned the Father Project, we have other reentry programs. A lot of our graduates, we do require they be off paper for 6 months before we will allow them to be mentors in our program, but we definitely take advantage of those graduates from the Father Project and also from our reentry programs. And I would say for us, it's probably like 4 to 6 months to really get off the ground.
Why are you excluding women?
We knew that question would come up. Initially we were concerned. We were concerned about safety. I think now, after doing this for a year and a half, we probably would bring men on or women on board. But that was our initial decision when we were first getting going.
Another question?
Just to piggyback what Gord was saying, for the rest of the panel, is there criteria for your mentors?
Well, I can fill that one. For us specifically, there is a criteria, especially for peer mentoring. We have 2 tiers. We have a silver tier and then we have a gold tier, and there's specific training involved. Kind of going off of what Boyd had said as well, there's not a requirement as far as off paper per se, but anybody who's a peer mentor has gone through our program at least to the retention stage before they can even be considered for a silver level tier, and that is only group mentoring. So they can only do things in a group setting. And then our community-based volunteers and our peer mentors who have gone a little bit more time away from the facility and away from that culture, they can go to the gold tier level, which is the one-on-one. But there's specific training that is incorporated throughout the mentor's tenure with us, and we use a 1-year minimum stay.
I think the only thing I'd like to add to that is for our requirements, as Boyd mentioned, we do want individuals to be off paper for 6 months. About 50% of our mentors currently do have a criminal record themselves. We want to make sure that they will be willing to make a commitment of 9 months to work with the mentee for at least a 9-month period. And then we're pretty strict about signing off on consents and being able to really look at what sort of information can be shared with a third party to make sure that the mentors are adequately trained on that, to be able to understand what are the probation requirements, to get a little bit of a greater background on the criminal justice system, because some of the mentors that are coming in that are interested do not have that background, and I think that's key for the mentor to be aware of, so that they're not crossing any boundaries with any information that is or is not released.
And for us, what we do is once they fill out our application, we do a background check. We ask for their social security number, and that's one way for them to start trusting us, because your social security number is very important. That's something that you cannot trust everyone with. So once they give me the paper, I don't let anyone see it. I protect that with my life and give it to the lady that does the background check. And also, we do training also with the mentors and let them know what we expect of them, and we also do training with the mentees. Yes. So they'll know the boundaries that are set for each of them.
What's your terminology off paper? I don't understand.
The off paper is when they finish their commitment off of their probation or parole supervision. So that means that they no longer have a requirement to report to a PO in Arizona.
Yeah, that's same in Minnesota.
I see 2 questions, and then I'm going to keep us going. Yes, sir?
Back to the recruiting question for a little bit. Does anybody use advertising or social media?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We use Facebook,
Twitter.
Twitter. We use Huffington Post and any of the nonprofit papers, because most of the time you can get free advertisement with them. So yes, we recruit that way as well.
We've also, I'm raising my hand now.
We all like to talk up here.
The other interesting thing that we have tried too, and it worked actually quite well, is we used a radio. We were interviewed on the radio, and it was KMOJ, which is more of an African American market, and we were really looking for African American mentors, and that was actually very successful. So you might want to look for those kind of public service kind of radio programs that are out there. I think you might find that useful.
Yes, ma'am.
Are all of you all pre-release mentoring? And if so, how far pre-release are you? When you said some go background check, I'm pre-release, so all of our mentors have to go through the state. So are all of you all pre-release or some not?
So we're both pre and post-release. We clear all of our mentors to go into the correctional facility and meet their mentors prior to being released. So we start the relationships inside of the prisons.
How long?
The participant should have 4 to 8 months left to their sentence.
And ours is 4 months to the gate that we begin, and we also have our mentors go in, and we have such a solidified relationship with our corrections facilities, we can actually bring in peer mentors on a one-time gate pass. So that's available for us as well.
We do not provide pre-release mentoring. What we do provide, though, is pre-release mentee training. So we work with individuals that are still incarcerated to talk to them about the importance of mentoring and to provide one-on-one support regarding the reentry plan. So that might include like fatherhood, employment, etc. So they're meeting with our staff pre-release, but we're not going through what can be kind of a hassle of having all the mentors travel to the facility. In Minnesota,
it's about an hour away.
Yeah, in Minnesota, a lot of the facilities are out of the city. So we really believed when we were designing the program, even though we would have liked to have done pre-release mentoring, that it would be a very tough sell to get a mentor on board and expect them to drive over an hour to visit with their mentee on the inside.
And we also do pre-release. We found it's very effective when we do the pre-release first. If we can get the mentor and mentee to meet while the ladies are in because they're still. That's the easiest place for them to meet them. But we also do post-release. If a woman comes out and she's recommended to us to help her get a mentor and help her, we still help her and get her a mentor. We also tell her, take her through our training program and let her know what we expect of her, because we train them too. They have to come to our programs also so they can learn how to re-enter society.
When you answered the pre-release question, was it about pre-release mentors doing pre-release? And those mentors have to be off paper for 4 to 6 months? Is that how you answer that question?
Are you talking to?
Yes, ma'am. I think you want to answer that.
No, I didn't mention anything off paper. The majority, although we use peer mentors, the majority of our mentors are not peer mentors. They're your regular business people, everyday individuals.
So when you said something about pre-release individuals that are in county jails, I guess.
In state prisons. We work in state prisons.
That way you, okay, I was trying to determine how did you know they had 4 to 6 months left on this?
Oh, yeah, they're in
they're already set.
We work in the state facilities, not the local jails.
Okay, because
we
it's
work in
different
state
local
prisons,
jails.
yes.
You don't know when they're coming out.
Right,
You know?
right.
Okay.
Well, and for ours, we actually are in the state facilities as well because we're pre and post-release, but we use a 4-month curriculum through SAMHSA that's evidence-based. It's called Seeking Safety. That is dealing with trauma as well as co-occurring. So that's how we know. We have a relationship with DOC to let us know when they're closer to the gate. That's how we know the timeline.
Yes, and it's quite easy to know the timeline when they have prison sentences.
Right. We have a lot of resources that the panelists have agreed to share with you after this event today. So we're going to make sure that we send those out to all the grantees, so you'll get some of the materials that people are referencing here.
Right, and I believe Kerri has a binder.
Kerri has a binder.
That you can look through. Yes, Juliana does as well. So.
And yes, ma'am, and then we'll keep going.
My question is about the family reunification that comes post-release. Can you elaborate on what you do with that?
Did you want to feel that first, Juliana?
Okay. For the women, most of the time the children, they're either in the ACS, is what it's called in New York, which is the Department of Social Services, or they're living with a family member. So we have counselors on board at our organization that go to court with these women. Now we're giving the women a place to live, a safe environment. And so what we do is we go to court to get the child back into the mother's custody. And then we bring the child to live with the mom at our organization. And for the men, what we're doing, mostly the men, their issue revolves around child support. So we go and fight to bring that amount down to something that they are capable of dealing with, so that they want to have a relationship with their child, because a lot of times that's what holds them back. They're afraid to go get a job because they have these huge child support issues. So we go to fight and bring those numbers down for them, and then help them get back into the child's life, whether it means them going to court with the mom or whatever it is, to get them back into the relationship.
And I would echo that. We are fortunate enough to have an attorney on staff. And all she deals with is family law, and she's 100% successful in all of her cases so far as the guardianship and everything, because you have the mother, the father, the grandparents, and those who have child custody or guardianship during their time in incarceration. So there's a lot of people there trying to work with the child or obtain full custody of the child. But I'd also encourage you to use family events centered around mentoring to engage the children, and also have the ability for the parents and the mentors specifically to role model pro-social behavior, because we have some participants who have like 14 children. So you want to make sure that you're trying to be all-inclusive for the family for that reunification, because they need to be able to build that authority back into the child's life, and also have that really good relationship foundational family events to kind of bring them together a little bit more.
And what we do, we go into the prison system also and teach the mothers parenting classes. We give them parenting classes, thinking for a change classes, victim impact classes. we teach them inside the prison. And as I stated earlier, while they're still, because if you catch them while they're in and they really want to change, all these classes that we provide, we go once a month to each facility. We go to 5 facilities. And we teach these women these particular classes, and sometimes you will see this light bulb come on in that woman's face like, okay, something's so simple, but it's not simple to them, you know, because the way they was raised, the things that have happened in their lives. So that's what we're here for. We go to them and help them.
I want to move on to training. And so what I want to ask you all is, what training tools do you use? How long are your trainings? What works for you in your programs?
I'm going to think I'm talking too much now.
Mentor training.
So we have an initial hour-and-a-half training session with our mentor guru or coordinator. And she covers this entire binder. Every mentor gets this binder, and it goes through boundary settings, more in depth about the program, correctional guidelines, anything that the mentor needs to know to be able to start their relationship with their mentee. And there's also follow-up training and development for the mentors continuously through their year tenure with AWE, and we've actually had a very great retention rate for mentors and even some who've gone beyond their 1 year. But the important elements of training is always to make sure that they start at that first level, so that everybody starts at silver, and then after they have a good foundation of how to really engage with the population and understand, and especially with the peers, they can graduate to that gold level.
Most what Kerri said, the boundaries, the Department of Corrections, although our training, our initial training is an 8-hour day, and we go through 8 modules, and the mentors spend a whole day at our organization doing the training. And one of the main components that they really get a lot out of is we do a module on active listening. So we teach them the importance of listening and being empathetic and reflective and all of those things. And then we do continuous training throughout the year of their commitment.
We have a 6-hour training, so it's similar to yours, and everything you're talking about, boundaries, active listening is really important. The other thing that we do that we think is really important is our mentor coordinator interviews each mentor as if it's a job. We even have a position description for the mentor, so they really know what they're getting into, and it's also a good way to really understand who that mentor is, what their passions are, etc. So when they're making that match, you really know that it's going to be a good match, because we also obviously interview the mentee as well. So I think that's really important part of that process as you're bringing mentors on board.
And actually, you hit on a few good points with that, because we also do that, and thank you for saying that, because those are really important. The interviews with the mentee and the mentor, we actually have them fill out forms of their interests and hobbies and what their background is, their age, demographics. We also have a module on motivational interviewing. And I would also encourage you to utilize that, because that really helps getting those responses instead of like the yes or no answers. It's that engagement of exactly what the whole scope of the issue is.
Yes.
And can I ask, the trainings that you all are using, are you all creating those in-house, or are you using other tools? I know, Kerri, you mentioned using Seeking Safety from SAMHSA. Can you talk a bit about that?
So we're using mostly best practices. I mentor other organizations that have been in the mentoring business for very long lengths of times. We also customize it to fit our particular organization. So some things we have done on our own, and a lot of things are just best practices.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, our materials come from lots of different places, from other organizations in Minnesota that have been very successful with mentoring, some things that are from a national evidence-based scale, so it's really hard to say, but there's a lot of different materials that you can take. The one thing we found, though, and maybe you have found this too, is a lot of materials are geared towards youth.
Yes, that is true. Children, yes.
It's really hard to find materials that are geared towards adults, and so sometimes we've taken materials for youth and adapted them to what we need, and you can do that in some cases.
And what we've done, we have a lady in our department that's pretty awesome. She researches everything. And what she done, she put together a PowerPoint so they can see a slide and do scenarios of what could happen and what couldn't happen or what may happen. So when she did all that research, although we also do mentoring for the children, this was good for us when we did our training, to train them. That way they can kind of have a vision, a visual of what may or may not happen. So when we do the training, that's, you know, we took some off the website, but she did, and it all turned out into one big nice PowerPoint to help us.
Just one more point. Big Brothers and Big Sisters, they do a huge training, mentor training, and anyone can really go. And even if you're not mentoring children, you can still get a lot out of their trainings and learn things, and like Boyd was saying, adapt them to the adult programs. Yes, ma'am.
For those that mentors that you recruit that aren't peer-to-peer, how do you help the mentors understand what the offender feels on the inside and what it's like for them to walk across that boundary?
Okay, since you're looking at me, I'll go ahead and respond. Like, I'll use that as a thing. You know, that's a very valid question, but it's very difficult to respond to because there really is no way. I mean, except for practice and engaging with that person. I mean, I'm from both sides of the fence. I worked for DOC for 7 years before I came to the CBO side, and so I have the understanding of both sides. But to be able to kind of give that understanding to a mentor who is just coming in out of the goodness of their heart and trying to give back to their community, it's very difficult. I think it's going to be built on the interaction that they have with their mentee. And as they have questions and they ask us, you know, well, my mentee is responding to this seems like a relapse trigger, which is also one of the training pieces we cover. That's how they begin to have that understanding. But, I mean, in my opinion, it's unrealistic to think that they're going to have that understanding of being behind the fence if they've never been there. Ideally, if you have the relationship with your corrections partner to have them go on a tour, that does volumes. So.
I think the other piece that you can try to, we try this when we can, is have actual participants that are in your reentry programs come to the training, talk about what they've gotten out of the program, what it was like pre-release, and, you know, offer that to answer any questions that they might have. That's one way.
What are some of the things you all have tried in your trainings that have not worked over the years? What can folks avoid by listening to you today?
For me, using DVDs, it doesn't work. People are not engaged, and at the end of the day, you're kind of questioning yourself. And I learned that within the first couple of months of doing mentoring training. Throwing a DVD in, and you know, it doesn't work for, especially if you're training a large group of mentors, 10, 20 mentors at a time. I don't think it engages them enough.
We try to keep it small. I mean, just we try to 8 to 10 at most in any particular training class. We feed them.
Yes, we feed them too.
That's important. It's very important. Any kind of recognition event, make sure you allow their children to come, make it family friendly. I guess that's more around engagement, but it's related to effectiveness with mentors.
And ideally, no more than one match in the beginning. I mean, people get overwhelmed pretty quickly, and you think that they have the capacity to do more than one, start them off with one. Because then you'll be able to see a little bit more clearer if there's any concerns or issues that are arising from the match.
Carletta, and then I'll take some questions.
And what we do, we have a event what we call the round table. We have some of the post-release ladies to come in with the mentors, and we all sit around, but we do tell them we're going to feed you, so, you know, definitely that'll get people there. And so once they come in, but even if we don't feed them, they come in because this is the passion that they have, the mentors. And the mentees, they come in the post-release because they was able to gain a mentor that have been in their corner that help them help themselves. And I say that a lot because that's very important, because without pro-social skills that some of these women don't have, and you get a woman in your corner that can tell you, you can do this, believe in yourself, it's okay, you know. But once we go around the round table and held this conversation, and different mentees and mentors and what their experiences with each other, they put it all together, and we're sitting there collaborating this and say, okay, what's going to happen here, what happened there, and once they all get together, they can see the do's and the don'ts and what helped each other out at that time.
Mm-hmm. And Christi, if I could just add one more thing, there's a fine line between enabling and supporting, and that to get that communicated to your mentor is critical.
Couple questions. Christi, I'll go first.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the last question that was asked from the audience around training mentors who are not peer mentors. I want to sort of speak to the piece of that that's really about, I think, cultural competency and sort of bringing folks in who may be from so far outside the community that the experience is totally new to them. Like, how are you addressing cultural competency at all in your program? I know, Boyd, you mentioned using the radio station to reach out to the African American community, but are there things, in addition to boundaries and all of that, that you're sort of saying in those trainings, look, this is what the experience is like?
Well, I know living in New York City, you are always engaged in a huge population from different cultural backgrounds. And so when you step into the prisons, you're meeting people of different faiths, of different cultural backgrounds, and you always have to keep that in mind when you're recruiting and matching them. So when we go out to recruit mentors, we have to make sure that we're recruiting a variety of people, because those participants come from a variety of backgrounds. And so if I know that I have I'm just going to use Muslim for an example because that's the smaller population that we work with. If I know that I have a Muslim participant, I'm going to match her with someone that can really relate to her. But how do I find that mentor? How do I get out there and find that mentor? So when you think about that particular culture, it's not about how that person looks. So once you we like to personalize everything. We get to know our mentors on such personal levels. We invite them to different events. So we really get to know who they are, where they're from, and what they like before we even put them in a match. And that's what helps us match the right participant to the right mentor, by really personalizing everything. I mean, we just happened to get tickets to an off-Broadway show, and I just invited a bunch of mentors. Let's go and let's engage in conversation, and let me see who these people are aside from the training process. Like, really get to know them, and you'd be amazed how many things that another person will share with you outside of the office setting or outside of the training setting. And that's pretty much how we dive into that.
I would also just don't make the assumption that someone wants a mentor that's just like them or been through what they've been through. We actually, when we had the smaller foundation grant prior to Second Chance, we did multiple focus groups actually with potential mentees and said, what would you want out of a mentor? And about half said, I would want someone that's been through my experience, but the other half said, no way, I don't want that. They wanted maybe perhaps someone that's in a profession that they want to be in someday, they aspire to. They want, they had all different kinds of things, so don't make the assumption that their culture, their religious background, etc., is that important, because it isn't necessarily. And I agree with Juliana that getting to know your mentees as well as your mentors and really individualizing that process is absolutely key, because you really don't know what they want just based on their culture, religion, family, whatever.
And that's a great point. And we also did recruitment kind of like you did as far as the community newspapers and another way to do your PR in your local newspapers. But I agree, along with the cultural relevancies, and we have a diversity component in our training, always think about generational too, because that is also another key as far as if you have a baby boomer, you put them out with a millennial, they're not going to know what the heck to do, let alone have the technology to talk.
There are a handful of people popping up. I said I see these two first. Yes, sir.
One of the feedbacks I got from our mentors was they did not expect the difference between pre-release mentoring and post-release, that there were some real differences as far as their interaction and their experiences. Have you noticed that, and do you address that in your training?
Yes, I can say that. And we've been doing pre-release work for a while, and I think it's because they have a letter writing component in the pre-release piece, as well as a face-to-face, if we can get them to meet at a graduation ceremony of the class. But post-release, they're very, very engaged. It's kind of going back to what Carletta had said. They're very engaged pre-release because they all have the time on their hands, right? Post-release, the first 48 hours is a blur to them. It's all about, what do I want to eat, right? After the 4-year stint of prison food. or getting back with my family, seeing my kids, and it's overwhelming. Even going to the grocery store is overwhelming for them. So the contact with their mentor is crucial in that first week or so, but also in the timeline to respect that, kind of trying to figure out where they're at. They're not going to be as engaged in that first few days as they were pre-release, but to make sure that you continue that contact to keep that engagement going, because they are going to need their mentor as things kind of settle down and they recognize, oh my gosh, I'm out now, I'm home. What do I do next?
And also what I found out with the ladies that I work with closely post-release, they've already been smothered for years, so they don't want to be smothered when they get out. Like you were saying, it's just they need freedom. What I tell the mentor, these are grown women, first of all. So respect them like you want people to respect you. Give them some space. Allow them to get out of society, because a lot of them coming out, they don't even know what hot wings are, And so they're trying to transition back into societies with their families, getting to know themselves, getting to know just how it is to live out here now, because so many things have changed. But with the post-release, like when I talk to them at least a couple of times a month. I tell them, I'm just going to call you. I'm not trying to be your stalker, but I will stalk you if I think I need to. Have a little humor with them, because it's your impression that you give them. As long as they know you're there and they have a number where they can contact you, they will contact you. Because we had a young lady in particular, had a mentor, and her mentor, well, I'm trying to call her, she didn't call me back. But after a couple of weeks, and I think she got settled mentally and get the excitement of just being out and being able just to blink at the wall without someone telling her to turn the light out. She called us back and said, well, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to help you in your program. I'm ready to get help. So they will reach back to you long as they know we reach to them first.
Yes, ma'am.
How often do you have your training, and what other resources do you use outside of food to get them in?
How often do we have our trainings, and what else do we do besides food?
Initially, we had trainings monthly. Now they're like quarterly. I mean, it just depends on the ebb and flow of when we need to have them based on the numbers that are coming in. How do we get them there? I'm telling you, food really works. I mean, we do have additional dollars available, especially for the peer mentors, as we're calling them. So to make it possible for them to mentor, we might give them a gas card, a bus card, an extra, maybe a Caribou coffee card, or Starbucks. Do you have Caribou's? Anyway, Starbucks, whatever, to make it possible for them to do it. So that I guess could be another incentive that we provide.
And I would echo everything that Boyd had said, but I would also add, you're going to have to do probably evening trainings, because that's what we did, and that's to be effective, because people work most likely the ones who are going to be your mentors, peer or otherwise. So also trying to think about the timeline that suits their needs in order to meet them.
Yeah, for me, I'm very flexible. Once I grab someone's attention and they're interested in the cause, and they say, well, I can't make it on a Saturday, I said, well, can you come during the week? Or, even if they come at 10 a.m., I'm going to have my assistant in the conference room going through the training process. So I'm very flexible when it comes to the mentors, because I really need their help. So, I try to make it as possible for them as I can.
And what we do on the training, same thing that they were saying, but we also will do a one-on-one training. Because some of the people, the ladies, because we only target women right now, their schedule is so awkward. We have to cater to them to let the mentors know we do need you, so therefore we're going to cater to what you need from us.
Did everybody hear all those answers? Good. There are a few questions over here, and then I'll go to you, Crystal.
Have you attempted to use the genogram? I know with our mentoring on pre and post release, we don't have as many successes with our mentorship. So we're trying to look into families who have people possibly who would support them, because a lot of the ladies who I go inside the penitentiary also, they kind of don't have anybody. So have you ever looked inside the family for mentors?
Well, for me, I look inside my family. My husband's a mentor. My husband's a mentor. My sister's a mentor. My niece, and then
what
No,
we
the returning citizens.
into their families.
Yes.
Does anybody do that?
No. I'm not sure if I know of grantees who are sort of recruiting from the family. I know that we, Christi and I, and the mentoring team, have sort of discussed that as maybe that's a possible strategy. The trick, though, of course, would be to find that family member who would not be the enabler.
Right.
And enabling can come from a place of love, but all the same is not helpful to them. So you would have to sort of smoke that out. So grandma might not be the best mentor. It may be uncle who, look, let them know, like, look, you know, you kind of messing up here. We need to get back in line. But no, I don't know anyone who does it, but it's certainly something to think about.
The few family members that I was able to recruit, I just let them know up front, you're not going to mentor your family member, because I don't think that's a good match. But I would like for you to mentor someone else that's in a facility that you can help because of an enabling part, the part of knowing that person, the part of you gonna do this or being bossy or something like that. I don't think that's a good thing for a family member to mentor a family member. So once a family member comes on board with us, we just pair them with someone else that's not their family.
Thank you.
Since most of the returning offenders have drug-related connections, and some of you already stated that you do have ongoing mentor training. I was wondering if any of that training included recovery coach type training?
Absolutely. Relapse potential and relapse triggers are covered in our training, and it's continuous because kind of going back to earlier questions about if people aren't as familiar with the population and they're just starting to figure out where the person's coming from, they might not see those elements right away. So we always touch base with our mentors around that continuously because recovery is such a prominent issue upon reentry, because you're talking about like the 90th percentile of people coming out have some sort of substance abuse history.
I think just to add to that as well is that we try to make sure that we're really aware of when the mentee is getting off paper or not going to be under any correctional supervision any longer, because that's a time when they're really at risk to fall back into some of that previous addictive behavior. So we work really closely with the mentors during those time frames, depending on that individual match and when that individual mentee is going to actually be free of the correctional supervision.
Actually, and that brings up a good point, Andy. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned now as far as another support network is your parole officer or your probation officer, because that person's also going to be kind of aware of like when they get off paper and things like that. But another trigger would be the first paycheck.
And another thing that you can do with them, you can go, that's why we love having mentors, because we can only be in so many places at one time. I tell the mentee, if you need to go to a substance abuse program, I'll go with you, one of our staff will go with you, but that's the purpose of having a mentor. Ask her to go with you for support, because it's a fear. And a lot of them don't want to address that. No, I'm not doing drugs anymore. No, I'm not. But on down the road, once you get comfortable with being out and being in society, and especially if you run around and fall into the same people, places, or things, what are you going to do? Who are you really once you get comfortable back in your own skin? If you need a substance abuse program, go, my God, just help yourself. Because only you know, only I would know if I need that. I can perpetrate to you with this facade, but who am I really? What am I really going to do? Because I know in the long run, if I don't help myself and go to a substance abuse program, once I get out to keep this going, because on the inside, I know you heard of jailhouse religion. That's true. We've seen women, you know, they doing this, and then when the family come, you go up there, there couldn't be. But that's what they do. So on substance abuse, you know, I tell them I can go with you. I send them information on substance abuse in their area, because we definitely want these women to know that this is something that can help you.
So, there's still hands. I'm gonna move on just for a second, and then we'll do some more at the end, I promise. Tell us about how you all match pairs. We're getting into that topic a little bit. I know that can be a thorny issue, so tell us how you all develop the mentor-mentee match.
I mean, I think I talked a lot about that already, but it's really understanding. You need to know that mentor very well. You need to interview them. You need to know their interests. their religious background, how important is that to them, you know, all of those things. So that, and you need to know from the mentee side as well, what do they want, what kind of goals do they have around this relationship. So when you're pairing them, it makes a good sense. The other piece to it is the mentor coordinator in our program, they meet with both of them the first time they meet to talk about the expectations of the program, the requirements around the program, again, even though they both know those, and then talk about those goals that they are mutually setting for that relationship that they want to see happen through that relationship. And then the mentor coordinator also continues to always be available to them. They definitely, by second, third meeting, they're contacting both of them, asking how is it going, because that's, especially in that early time, it's really important to get those questions answered, because there's times when the mentor says, you know, I just don't feel like I'm connecting, what can I do, you know, just kind of problem solving some of those issues that might come up. So yeah, that's our process.
And also, even when you find that perfect match, 6 months down the line, you know, things may not work out, but it doesn't have to be a complete failure. You can rematch both the mentee and the mentor, and you're going to run into that from time to time because, as Carletta was saying, the pre-release person and the post-release person are almost two different people. So things may be going good the first couple of months of the pre-release mentoring, but then when they get out, the two just don't really click anymore. And then you have to just rematch them.
Do any of you cross matches across gender?
No.
Any of you at all?
I don't.
We don't.
No, that's part of the gender responsiveness. I mean, we've had requests of women requesting a male mentor, and then after we talked to her a little bit further, I mean, she elected not to do that down the line. So, I mean, that's just one of the things.
Yeah, we don't offer it. We keep it male-male.
Yeah, that's what we do.
And can you all talk a bit about why you don't do that?
Well, I guess for me, I mean, realistically, and I'm going to be totally honest here, we're dealing with men and women who have been in prison for a couple of years. And so one of the main issues around women have been relationships. A lot of them are doing time because of horrible relationships. So for us to introduce that woman to a man, we're almost going to disservice her, because from that, this woman's been in prison for 3 years, her hormones are going crazy, and then she has this male mentor, and we just don't want to be responsible for that happening, and we just don't think it would work out as a mentor-mentee relationship where we can get all of the benefits and the mentor can get all of the benefits and the mentee can get all of the benefits, so we stay away from it.
And I can tell you from practical experience, it doesn't work. And the reason why we know is because our group mentoring used to be co-ed. It was never a one-on-one matching. But we did group mentoring co-ed, and it was like better than Match.com for like the first few months. I'm not even kidding. And they always tell you like the first year of your recovery, because I don't count prison time as recovery time or clean time. They like to think that. That's not true. So it's one of those things that they just found that instant connection. It was just really, really just not a good place to be. Yeah. So we do quarterly events that are co-ed, but that's because it's more of the family-centered events. So we don't have that concern or issue anymore. So that's just from our experience.
And can I ask, does that go both ways? Is that just sort of the women who are coming out of prison, you don't pair them with men, or do you do that as well with the men who are coming out of prison?
Well, I can say, I mean, there are organizations in Minnesota that do pair women with male offenders. We do not. And I we felt it was a safety issue, but beyond that, just like the women coming out, the men coming out, you know, they've been in prison for so many years, they haven't seen a woman. You know what I mean? It just adds to.
I think it's kind of interesting just to add on to Boyd's point too, that we actually require that the mentor-mentee meetings occur in a public space. We encourage that to happen at our office or our Father Project location. So we do that for the same-sex matches as well, obviously, which I think is hugely important, just to make sure that the mentors believe, or really that, so that everybody in that relationship is safe, and there's going to be a little bit less likelihood of manipulation occurring.
I I see a lot of hands coming up now, so I'm going to stand up so I can see them all. But Crystal, did you want to say anything else from the grantee perspective again? Have you seen this differently?
No, they hit on everything that I wanted them to say around what the concerns are around cross-gender.
Thank you. And a lot of hands went up in the room, so I haven't been able to see the back very well. Yes, sir.
Just a real quick question. In order to make your mentors as effective and efficient as possible, what are some of the different training topics that you all use during your training?
We heard a few, right?
Yeah.
We heard active listening. We heard cultural competence.
Motivational interviewing.
Motivation.
Relapse triggers, boundary setting. I mean, you can feel free to flip through the book when we get done. But one of the things actually we didn't touch on, and going back to diversity, would be sexual orientation. And I think that's really important to bring up, especially with women in facilities. I don't know if you're as familiar with them, but they create families. So sometimes you have women in a female-to-female relationship upon release, and so the family has difficulty accepting that. So having mentoring and training around that is also helpful, as well as the transgender component.
And just one more thing with the mentoring. We also teach our mentors about the barriers that the men and women will face. So we introduce housing and the issue, we introduce employment and the issue. So we try to educate our mentors as much as possible, almost putting them in the participants' shoes. Like, this is what they are going to face when they come home, and this is how we need to support them and what we can do to help them.
And also, we teach them, we ask them not to emphasize too much on faith-based and politics, because that's not the purpose of being a mentor now. If you can introduce that in there, fine. If that's something that they want to talk about, fine. But we don't want them to just push that on the mentee, because we want them to mentor them and let them choose what they want to do, because they've been confined so long, they don't have choices, they feel.
And I think training lists are probably something in your resources that we can help distribute out to the group, so you can see some of the ones from the people up here. Two in front, yes, you.
So after the matches happen, what kind of activities do you encourage between the two?
Well, we have both the group mentoring is a place for them to work together, and then there's also topics that are facilitated during each one of our mentoring sessions. So it's not just gathering of people and just conversation. There's facilitated topics, and then they can have the opportunity to have conversation after. We also invite them to go out and go to a coffee shop, or again, a public setting to meet with their match. Some of them work through resumes with their mentors. If they're going towards employment, so if they have an educational purpose, they like to work with their mentors and trying to find secure funding for financial aid, or what career track they should go through. I mean, just whatever the mentor can offer with their expertise, it kind of builds around their hobbies and interests naturally.
And as a follow-up,
go ahead.
So if they go, say, to a coffee house, what are the instructions they're given around money and the exchange of money, who pays for the coffee here?
And that goes back to the boundary setting. So what it is the mentors typically, in a way, the first time they'll pick up the coffee just as like an extra incentive or whatever, but it's nothing that they do continuously. I mean, it's something that there's lines up front. There's people who, mentors who want to give money because they're in that heart of compassion, and they want, this person's having difficulty with their rent or their utilities, I want to give them some. Nothing like that occurs. And ideally, what we do is give the mentors gift cards, so like a Starbucks or whatever coffee company is in your state, and we utilize those instead of money, so there's never that exchange in that relationship.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to go back to the question of the pre-release, post-release relationship. And obviously the environments are very different, and you've expressed and talked about that. Once that person gets out, is that there's a transition which takes place. And in many cases, what may happen is that, you spoke to the fact that, there's kind of this 48-hour piece transition. But I guess what I'm asking here is that for those relationships that fall apart, or what we call fall off, because of the challenges that the ex-offender has now of freedom and hormones and trying to sustain employment and those type of things, do you have ways or strategies in which you kind of work with the pair so that when that starts to fall apart, is that you begin to kind of reunite or help repair that relationship?
So the funny thing with us, and this happens a lot, what you're saying, so the pre-release, our pre-release work is very detailed. We do a lot when we're in the prisons. And our mentors are off on the side having their one-on-one conversations, and then we're in the group. And one of our main, our first focus is to make sure everyone has a place to leave when they get out of prison. So we're bringing in a ton of resources, and we're running workshops that are surrounded on relationships and families and housing and, you know, all those things. And then the women come home and they have all these demands from parole and their families and boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And the mentor is kind of left to linger. But in the process of trying to get everything done, they will call me and they'll want me to help them with something. And every single time they call me, I say to them, call your mentor, because that's why you have them. So whatever they want me to do, I always redirect them to their mentor. So they have no choice but to reach out to that mentor, because that's the whole purpose of the mentor, to have someone to help you with guidance and transition and, you know, all of those things that you need to get done. So I sort of redirect them to that mentor, because they're always going to call you for something.
To reinforce that relationship.
And that goes back to, I mean, what really I think you're asking is around engagement. And I think that's where the pre-release component is very strong, is that they already have a really good rapport with their mentor pre-release. It just naturally continues post-release, versus if you're post-release only, it's a little bit more challenging to get them and keep that engagement going. So we do help them with trying to reconnect, kind of what Juliana is saying. You know, if there's, we always say, hey, come to the mentoring group, and we also give out supportive services on mentoring group nights.
I guess part of what I'm addressing is that specifically for those fall-off situations, I mean, usually you have some. Is that, are there specific strategies that you use when people disappear? And in some cases, what people are going to do, they're going to disappear because they want to return to a life that they believe they don't want you to be part of. You know, so, and that's kind of what I'm looking at, is that, are there specific strategies that you use to kind of pull people back in, those who have moved on away from the mentoring relationship and you know, for whatever reason?
And that's something that it's going to happen regardless. I mean, you're always going to have those that you can't, quote unquote, save. I mean, they're just going to go back to life because that's what they like to do. And one of the things that we always require upon enrollment is at least 3 different contact numbers. So kind of going back to, you know, if you have your family member, you know, who has your kids, you know, who's your best friend, you know, anything like that to try and help with that. If they had a job, we can always go through the employer if we have that relationship with the employer. And again, the supportive services at the time of the mentoring events, because they're usually called back for like a bus pass or something like that, when they, even if they've fallen off for a little bit, that's always something to kind of bring them back in as well. I mean, but then there's the realistic truth that you won't be able to get them all.
And what we do, when I see a lady that haven't been in a program that we can't contact even with some of those numbers, because sometimes they don't even contact the family member, I just let them know that we're still there for them. That if they need us, we're in the same place, we have the same phone numbers, because so many of them change their numbers periodically. I mean, like every 2-3 weeks. I'm doing this number's no good, well, here's a new number. But the thing about it, we're consistent. We're going to be in the place that we started out at, unless we get a bigger place. We need, but to let them know that our number's the same. I don't judge them. If they look totally different, if I know that they've been doing something they shouldn't do, but that's their life, I just want them to know that we are there for them. We're not here to judge you. We're not here to put you in a box. We're not here to say, well, you know this, you should do this, because my thing is, they're grown women. We have to respect them. And that's one thing I do, regardless of how I look and how my heart may fall. If I see a young lady that has been going through again, that's okay. Call me. Call Miss Shannon. Call who you trust. Call who you like and call who you don't like. Just call us, because we will be there for you if you need us.
So in terms of keeping mentees engaged, I've heard an open door policy, broadly stated. I've heard coffee cards. I've heard bus passes. Are there other incentives that you all use to keep mentees engaged?
I think in our program, one of the benefits that we have is is 3 professional staff folks involved working on 3 distinct issues. So one person's going to be working with that mentee all around child support arrears and becoming a better parent. And then another individual will work with them on gaining and retaining employment. And then the third individual in the mix is the mentor coordinator, and then obviously the mentor. So I think that one of the ways that we retain the mentees is by providing them kind of a wraparound pro-social model that's not leaving all of that on the mentor, so that you can, you know, let the mentors know up front you're not going to be running around trying to get, in most cases, the individual that you're mentoring a job, but that'll be left to this staff person. What your role is to work together with the staff to become the pro-social connection in the community. So I think that's very key in our retention of our mentees.
And how we keep our mentees engaged that have children that's in our program. We do the Girl Scout Beyond Bars program with the children. We allow them to come to Troop with us and ask them to help us with their children and other people's children. We're getting ready to go to a drillers overnight. We ask the mothers that's out to come help us, you know, volunteer. They can also come up to our facility if they need to use the computer. If they need stuff, they can come up there, and if they need a ride, we give them a Walmart card when they first get out with their mentor to help them get their personal hygiene. But we just engage them in helping with us with the children also, because we need volunteers. And what better place to start out with your child once you have them is to do something free. You don't have to worry about money. We're with the children every Thursday, so come to Troop. Help us with the children. And we found out that the brightness on their face, and you know, they like, okay, I'm helping, I'm giving back to society. And that's what a lot of them want to do, is give back to society, but they don't know how, because they think on their forehead is, I'm a felon. People looking at me. When in reality, people's looking at everyone. But when you have that mentality, you're going to think people's looking at you because you just got out of prison. You're not productive, you know, you don't have any social skills, and that fear of just putting one foot in front of another, one day at a time, that's hard for some of these women, especially if they don't have family support, financial support, or housing and stuff like that.
And I'm going to jump tracks for just 1 second because I want one more topic to get covered up here, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, I promise. I'm sorry, it's so many topics to cover. I want the panelists to all talk for a few minutes about their partnerships with DOC. I think that's a really final sort of linchpin here for us all to figure out what's the meat behind the MOU, right? You all have MOUs when you apply for your grant. Great. What does it mean to actually implement the work? What is the importance of communication? And how do you work with your mentors so that they understand the culture of corrections, so that their expectations are clear and the protocol is clear when they're going in pre-release? So.
Okay, so for us, we've been working with DOC for over 25 years. So it's a little easier on us when it comes to getting into the facility. But once we're in and we're bringing programs into their facilities, we not only report to the Bureau of Justice because we're spending their money on this program, but we keep the Department of Correction updated on who's in our program, what they're doing, the progress that they're making. So we keep them involved in what we're doing, and we let them know that it's important that they know what is going on. We also attend the resource fairs, volunteer recognition fairs. We're always there with our mentors. Anything that we can do to bring resources, because a lot of times the facilities are trying to introduce new resources to the offenders. So they'll send emails to us to let us know what's going on. And then even if we have to rearrange our schedule, we make sure that we're there, because they're going to remember who came in to help them. So then when you need their help, they're going to be there to help you. So that's what we do to keep connected to the Department of Corrections.
And we've also had a very long relationship with DOC, and with my experience from both sides of the fence, one of the things I can really impart to you is get to know the line staff. Because communication that trickle down from the Director of Corrections, who may be very supportive of your program, to the correctional officer who's keen to open the gate for that person to come out to go to your program, is very large. So you got to make sure that when you get to the facility, get to know the line staff pretty well, because they will also be your voice boxes inside to say, oh, you know what, such and such program has been really helpful for inmate so-and-so. Maybe you should check it out. And Arizona has been kind of progressive in the last few years with regards to reentry. So we serve on several coalitions with Department of Corrections, and we also connect with that parole or probation officer on the outside to help facilitate their communication with their parolee or probationer and act as another supportive network for them to be trained on and also to communicate with us about them. So.
I definitely agree with that on our end as well. I think it's also important to try to establish like a steering committee where you're inviting Department of Corrections representatives to come in and hear about the good work that we're doing in the programs, and to be transparent about what the results are and how we can continue to work together to hopefully reduce recidivism in our communities. So I think getting the Department of Corrections on board to understand more about what your program outcomes are, and then being involved in as many coalitions with the Department of Corrections is also hugely important.
And help them out. I mean, we've had several mock interviewing fairs that we go out and we help them with their transitional program, because they all have a pre-release component themselves inside. Go in there and say, hey, we're willing to offer, mock interviewing or whatever your agency can offer to support that effort inside, so that way they feel like they're getting something in return with that relationship.
And how do you help your mentors understand the requirements that corrections puts on them when they're coming into the facility? Do you find they're pretty respectful about that? How do you balance?
Well, for New York State, before you can enter the facility, you're going to go through a 3-hour orientation with that facility, and they're going to tell you what you can do, what you can't do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And my advice to my mentors is always just be humble when you go in, because ultimately they're doing us a favor, and without them we can't help anyone. So I always tell my mentors, just be humble. Even if you get someone that's irritated that day, don't take it personal. And we're here to do a job. We have a purpose, and whatever it takes for us to do it, that's what we do.
We have mentors that have went to the facilities, and we have established, the main thing is a trust factor. They're going to trust us. Once they know who you are, they're going to trust you. The director, she knows us. We can come in, they know us. But we tell the mentors, get to know who you're going to see, because sometimes the staff changes and they may not know who you are, but the director, she's usually the same. So what we do is tell them, don't, like you were saying, don't be arrogant when you go up there, especially when you go up there consistently and then all of a sudden you run into an issue. Be humble yourself and let them know who you are and who you're with. Don't go up there thinking that you just don't have to answer to them, because this is DOC. They are in prison, and we know you want to go up there and see your mentee, but just realize where you're going to, because we established a trust factor with them, and we don't need anyone to go up there and tank that. You know what I'm trying to say.
So I have a question around sort of bringing in all these very well-trained volunteers, but there could still be, someone who doesn't quite get something. Like I remember I went into a prison once as a part of a program and had a guy there who notarized somebody's document. Mind you, we didn't even take pens, nothing. Someone dropped their address in my hand so I could write them. If DOC knew about that at all, they would have shut down our entire visit. So what do you do when someone, in a moment thinks, well, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, I take a pen from you or whatever. What do you do about that? Because those little breaches can cause corrections to give you a side eye. The trust can be breached.
I think you have to educate everyone that you're bringing in that facility. I mean, for myself, I give them applications and say fill them out. And I remember when I first started the mentoring program, the young lady said to me, she said, well, I don't have a stamp. And I said, well, go to your counselor. You put it through as legal mail. And she says, well, she's not going to give me a stamp. And I immediately caught what she was trying to do to me. She was trying to get me to give her a stamp. But I had remembered all of the training that I received, and I knew what she was doing. So I think when people are well trained and they run into those situations, they can identify them and not fall prey to those types of situations. So I think it's just reinforcing that in your mentors so that they know it and they can identify it when they hear it.
But if that breach does happen, what do you do so that corrections isn't totally like, okay, you know,
So that you back up your agreement with corrections.
Yes.
We have a meeting.
I think you have to be honest. Absolutely. Transparency is really key because you got to recognize they have the job to do, right? The safety, security, and control. So you have to be respectful that, you know, they're trying to do what they're told to do and they're supposed to do. And if you see somebody cross that line, I mean, we have our volunteers, our mentors watch the same security volunteer training that new DOC staff come in and watch. So it's like this nice curriculum in PowerPoint. It has this nice little video and this little explanation of the, you know, the inmate trying to pass a note or the stamp, and that's a very common one. And so, I mean, just kind of recognizing that you need to impart on your mentor that they need to be able to tell you if anything out of the ordinary happens. Because I think that's the first thing. Because they might not think anything of it if you don't, unless you say, you know, hey, invite me to tell you anything that has happened during your interaction with inmates. But also, we escort them in. They don't go in by themselves. So they're either with our staff or they're with the correction staff if they happen to be going to a visitation with an inmate. But they've had those interactions with us before, so if they do have something come up that could be a boundary issue, they immediately come to us, and then we facilitate the conversation with inmates saying, hey, you know better, what are you trying to do? I mean, that's just, because once you call them on it, they're like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. I tried to get that perfume, it didn't work.
Along with your relationship with DOC, what is it with probation and parole? And do you ever find yourself having to report and that can you dismantle the report? So.
I think for any reentry programming, it's very important to ask your participant to give you consent, even though it might not be needed, to ask the participant to give you consent to be able to work with their probation officer, but to twist it in a positive light as to how it will benefit them. So, for example, let's say that somebody, you know, went to the wrong location or something's come up where probation's concerned, that we can actually step up and talk to the probation officer about, you know, the great job you've done progressing through fatherhood classes or through employment readiness training, or you've just recently obtained this job. So if you tell the participants that you're going to be able to relate to advocate for them if needed on behalf of the probation relationship, I think that that's hugely important.
And to kind of go along with that, I'm sorry, really quickly, food is also really good for POs, just FYI, because food helps everybody, because everybody likes to talk around the kitchen table, I'm just telling you. But one of the other things is we encourage for those people who do relapse, we have that coaching technique with our participants for them to self-disclose to their PO, because it could be a little bit tenuous of a relationship if you become that reporting entity, you know, calling the PO saying so-and-so just relapsed over the weekend, we don't know. We want to make sure that the mentees do that themselves. That way we're not seen as an authority figure.
I just had a question. How many matches do each of you have?
We have 100.
In this Second Chance Mentoring Act, we've had 41 matches, and we're a year and a half into the program, and we have 68 folks enrolled. So there's still some matches to happen in the next weeks.
Juliana and Carletta,
for this new grant, we have 32. For our 2009 to 2011 grant, we have over 100 matches. We were only supposed to have 50.
Wow. We had 126.
Okay.
I got
Quick, simple question. What do you do first? Your monthly match reports, if you guys receive them. What do you do to encourage your mentors to send in those monthly match reports?
How do we encourage mentors to send in monthly match reports?
We don't have our mentors send in monthly match reports. We call our mentors and we verbally on the phone find out what's going on, or we send an email a couple times a month. What's going on? What have you been doing? Where have you been? So
and what we do, we call them also, but we also send them, if we have a survey that we want them to fill out, we send that to them with a self-addressed envelope to make sure they send it back, which is easier for them because they're already helping us, so we don't want them to have to another stampish.
And ours is not on a monthly basis. What it is at every contact, they send in a form of the contact, and it's a very easy thing, it's very short, but it also keeps them giving us information, and that's covered at training as one of the requirements of being a mentor. So they know that up front. Hey, there's going to be some work here.
Part of that expectation.
Yes.
more.
Briefly
same.
talk about your
Sorry.
program structurally. You touched upon it a little bit, Andy, regarding 3 people you have to support. What does your staff look like? You mentioned mentor coordinator. I don't have one of those.
Oh, well, for our program, ours is somewhat unique because it was building on an existing program called Mind the Gap, and it's related to our fatherhood project, where we have a case manager that goes pre-release to a particular prison, and he's working, and we work very closely with child support. And we were talking about reducing, the arrears and so forth. That's exactly what that's about, as well as parenting, family reunification, and so forth. So he starts meeting with them like 3 to 6 months pre-release. He develops a plan with them, works with child support to start working on those issues before they even get released. We come in with our grant, so these are 2 that are kind of being combined, where we do the pre-mentee orientation, we do a little bit around domestic violence protocol, empowerment, like personal empowerment classes and so forth, and a little bit around employment as well, pre-release. So we kind of combine those programs together to really provide a holistic. So then when they're post-release, we have that same case manager that's working with them pre-release is working with them post-release. They have a weekly parenting class. They have full access to Father Project, which includes legal services, child support assistance, and those same child support officers that are working with them pre-release are the same ones that are working with them post-release. I mean, they have a dedicated caseload of these guys. I can go on, but and then we have a mentor coordinator as well.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. So your case manager does that, does the training, does the...
Yes, a lot of that training. And so then we have a dedicated employment specialist as well that does a lot of the employer development, placement, retention, and so forth. So it's kind of combining 2 programs into one. And so mentoring has been added. And, I must say, one thing that we have learned from this project is we didn't really do a lot of mentoring before. Mentoring really is kind of that thing that really kind of wraps around this person. I've had folks say to me, the participants say to me, when you go to Goodwill Easter Seals, they grab you. You're in, and you're not leaving. You're not going anywhere. And I really think mentoring has been that kind of that blanket, I guess I would say, around all of these other services we provide. So we have found it to be extremely beneficial for all of our programs that we're providing.
We haven't had as much luck inside with our connections, having agreed to some of our MOUs and things. So if we're trying to get hold of people inside, what kind of screening do you use? Do you have a case manager or someone who is going inside? Do you have some screening instruments or tools or things as we're trying to make those contacts? What kind of?
You mean screening tools for
just selecting who would be good fits for?
Oh, we already, basically our DOC and child support enforcement divisions, they select the people that are coming into our program. So these are fathers that have children with child support orders that are being released.
Just court orders.
Yeah, it's not really court. It's not court order. It's
like Kerri.
But for us, we created the criteria that we thought would best serve the program and the participants. So we say, okay, if you're a man or a mother or a father, and you're in the last 4 to 8 months of your sentence, and then we say, if you would like to have a mentor and, reentry transition, those are the people that we help. Unfortunately, we don't limit to that. We help everyone. Everyone comes to us, and we kind of give them some kind of service, especially pre-release, because in New York, you hear of New York City, but New York is a very big state, and so you have upstate New York, and we don't necessarily serve them, but you feel so bad that they're not getting proper services that you try to provide some pre-release services to them as well. But for people that are going to be pre and post, we had to come up with a criteria to recruit the people inside. So you may have to come up with what your own criteria would be.
Let your corrections folks know that, and they help you do it.
Right, when you put together your proposal for the corrections department, right? Because you put together a separate proposal to send to corrections, and then let them know, if you give me your email, I can send you a sample of the proposal I put together for corrections. And in that proposal, you put your requirements. And then they know which inmates, or excuse me, I hate to use that word, which participant to offer it to.
And I would just tack onto that. Oh, I'm sorry if I let it. And we do the minimum requirements as stipulated by the grant, but we also do a pre-release orientation. So it goes over all the requirements of the program, the length of the program, what the participant is expected to do. And thank you for correcting that language. I fall into that sometimes from my old life. And part of that, it gives them the opportunity to self-select out. So if they say, oh, okay, so this is a year, you're going to follow me for a year, and even though we say, hey, we're not your PO, we're not going to be there, trying to report on you or anything like that, but as long as they know up front, hey, this is a requirement, we're going to meet you as much as you're willing to give, then they actually do that themselves. And so your suitability kind of happens naturally. But before I forget, kind of going back to mentoring resources, because I just remembered the name of it, Ready for Work was a DOL project before the Prisoner Reentry Initiative, and they took a lot of their mentoring best practices for PRI, now the REXO, from that initiative.
Yeah.
Before I forget again.
That was good, yeah.
What we do
Question, sir?
as far as getting mentees, we create a flyer and we send a flyer to the case manager. So once you establish a relationship with the DOC facility that you're in, create a flyer and send it to the case manager, and they can put it up on their board. We have ladies that's in the community level that can hand them out to some of the ladies that has 6 to 8 months before they get out.
So we're running out of time.
Yes, you are. Do any of you have experience with local TAs?
Yes.
What has been your success? Our grant is based on going to the local correctional facilities. We have time issues. What has been your experience with local TAs?
Are you specifically talking recruitment, sir, or are you just talking about being able to do pre-release contact?
Pre-release contact, post-release contact, getting people when they haven't been sentenced yet.
Okay, now that's a different cohort. It's a very smaller population that you're talking about, the people who are like the pre-sentencing population. We don't have experience with that, but because jail is so transitory, in nature, they're only there for a couple months before they even go to state or they get out. What we try and do is get the contact from the probation officers level. So we get them once they're post-release to be able to come to our facility. So we don't really have as much pre-release contact because it's just too much of a turnover all the time in our state.
So what I would like to invite you all to do, because lunch is going to be you have to go get lunch, and there are a lot of us here, so I don't want to set you all behind the lines. What I would love to have you do, first of all, is the woman who was speaking during our presentation today is Crystal Garland. She is one of your TA providers through the Justice Center. I want you all to know Crystal. She has other colleagues at the Justice Center who work with her as well, but she is your designated technical assistance provider. So any questions we don't have time to answer today, Crystal will either answer for you or connect back to the panel or other people in the field to get you answers.
Or if you know that you have Sayed Abdullah and you're confused all of a sudden, she's still your point of contact.
Yes. And so the second thing is feel free to zip emails about follow-up information you want from the panel. If you all want to try to grab a panel member really quickly, you can do that, but they need to eat too. So I want to try to release the room. And know that we will be sending you information after this event too to follow up about the materials that we discussed.
And just one quick plug, on Wednesday at 1:45, we're going to be having a session on integrating risk reduction into mentoring programs. You'll hear a lot about risk reduction and evidence-based practices throughout this conference. There's a lot of research related to this population adult mentor, so this is a good session for you all to go to and to understand what this actually means for your program. Integrating risk reduction and mentoring is tomorrow at 1:45.
Thank you all for all of your questions and participation. We'll see you throughout the conference. Thank you.